I got into this realm of health and wellness. This is me when I was, I think, 12 or 13 years old. I was running track and field in middle school, and I was a very happy kid, but I also had some health issues. I struggled with challenges with my gut, digestion. Sometimes I would have really severe allergy attacks. I had headaches almost every day, and the doctors told me for my headaches to take Advil. They said for my gut issues to take Tums and antacid medication, which you guys know is one of the worst things you could do. And for allergies, they said to take Zyrtec. That was my experience with Western medicine. So after some time, I got into high school. I was thinking more for myself, and I started looking on the internet, because that's what you do when you're 14 years old and it's the year 2013 and you've used a computer since practically you were 5 years old. And I learned about food and how food can impact our health. I learned about particularly these three great teachers talking about the value of eating a diet that's more aligned with our evolutionary biology. How many of you guys have heard of any of these three teachers and or books? I think everybody should be raising their hands if you're here. These people sort of started this. So to me, it made sense that I could actually change my health by changing my diet. As a kid, they always said, eat healthy, do this, but I didn't understand how it would affect me. But I remember specifically from Mark Sisson, I read this term epigenetics, and I understood, wow, those issues I had as a kid, I thought they were just genetic. I couldn't do anything about them. I thought that I was destined to deal with them. But in reality, there's this term epigenetics, which is the science studying how environmental influences affect our genes. And I was sold that diet was 80%, as these teachers were saying. And I think there's some truth to the value of diet, but there was more. After struggling with diet for several years and feeling better, but then ultimately hitting what I would call a plateau, I thought that there must be more. I just had a feeling I'm still having some symptoms, and no matter how much of the autoimmune paleo diet or the gut and psychology syndrome diet, how many of you guys have heard of any of these more extreme kind of elimination diets? How many have tried them? So I went through that, and I just felt there's got to be more. I don't feel like I'm at my full potential, but epigenetics says that there's more. Well, I learned about mitochondria. Mitochondria are the engines in our cells. How many of you guys have heard of mitochondria? Come on, yeah, let's go. This is where it's at. So as you probably have heard before, mitochondria are like our cellular engines, the powerhouse of the cell. They convert chemical energy in food into useful chemical energy for our cells. And what really struck me is the idea, as I was struggling with these really strict elimination diets, that if your mitochondria are damaged, it'd be like if you had a damaged car engine. If the spark plugs in your car's engine were worn down, you could put in premium or super premium gasoline, but the spark plugs in the engine are still worn down. Your car might not accelerate properly. It won't burn the fuel. Well, in the same way, if our mitochondria are damaged, you could eat the perfect paleo, keto, carnivore, vegan, whatever you want to eat that you think is the perfect diet, and your cells wouldn't be able to use it. And that fascinated me. So I wanted to know, well, what controls mitochondria? And that's when I learned about circadian rhythms, and I learned about light. Our circadian rhythm, how many people have heard this term before? Come on. It's an internal rhythm that connects our internal biological function with what? The external environment. Specifically, what is the big ball of fire in the sky? The sun. That times, it powers all life, and the circadian rhythm keeps our internal time systems running with the sun. At night, when the sun sets, when we get to darkness, we make melatonin. We repair our mitochondria. It's the most powerful antioxidant, anti-aging, anti-cancer molecule in biology. It repairs our cells. Now, if we're exposed to artificial light at night, that disrupts our body's production of melatonin, which is why I created premium blue light protection glasses. Because do you guys remember the UVEX safety goggles? How many people were OG biohackers wearing big UVEX safety goggles? I see some hands. They block the right wavelengths. The clear lenses didn't and still don't block the right wavelengths. Those were the only ones that looked good. So we had to create something that combined stylish frames with lenses that had protection. Anyway, for me, this was a huge breakthrough. So melatonin helped me get better. The sun helped me improve my health even further and go to a new level mentally, physically. So I wasn't doing a lot of working out, but I just got a bit more tan. I gained a bit more muscle. Yeah, also you go through puberty, but I have a lot of friends in middle school they were pale and skinny then, and they're still pale and skinny. So it even when they grow up a little bit. And so this had a profound impact on my physiology. This is me when I was maybe 12 or 13. This is me when I was maybe 19 or 20. And there was a huge benefit. It was great, right? How many of you guys have gone out and sunbathed and actually on a regular basis experienced the power of sunlight in your life? Okay, that's great. And if you haven't, highly recommended. It'll absolutely transform your life. So I was in love with the sun. I thought it was the be-all, end-all for life. I thought that based on everything I had learned, well, it wasn't Western medicine. It wasn't naturopathy that I had tried. It wasn't the diets, even the best, paleo, keto. It wasn't just that. It was light. I was sure it was light. And I was sure that if I optimized my circadian rhythm, which controls our neurotransmitters and our hormones, that also controls our sleep and wake and our mitochondrial energy production, that I would have so much energy flowing through my body that I would just be, let's say, enlightened, that I would feel amazing. And physically, I was doing much better than I had before. But mentally, I was struggling. So this next picture, this is me, similar time period as the other one. I had cut my hair. I shaved it completely at one point. And I was in Croatia, and I was in the most beautiful place on the external surface. Absolutely stunning. How many people have been on the Mediterranean, Croatia in particular, the Adriatic Sea? Flat water, salty, cool, but not too cold. Amazing. And everything should have been perfect. I was on the island of Hvar in this picture. Great food, great resources of all kinds. But what was missing? I didn't feel whole inside. I had started my business. I had been traveling for 3 years. I had met with some of the top celebrities in the world who were using our products. But I felt empty. I wasn't happy. So I had done all this sunlight stuff. My hormones and neurotransmitters, my blood labs were looking relatively good. And then I started asking deeper questions. I remembered back to some of the books that I had read when I was early on in my journey, when I first learned about mitochondria. 2 here. Light in Shaping Life by Roland Van Wyk, a Dutch guy from here, and The Body Electric by Robert O. Becker. And the key takeaway of these books is that we are actually beings of light. Our cells communicate with light. The stimulus for cells to divide, mitosis, a critical process in growth and development of every living organism, it's stimulated by small pulses of ultraviolet light. And they found that out because a glass slide would block this light because it blocks ultraviolet. When they use quartz, which transmits ultraviolet, the stimulus of this light the cells would grow and divide in these experiments. Shocking stuff. Highly recommend both of these books. In The Body Electric, a researcher who wanted to understand why salamanders can regenerate an entire limb, but humans can't. And he was working during World War II as a medical student, seeing tons of people coming back to New York City mangled with limbs cut off and very, very severe conditions, and asking, why can't we regenerate in the 20th century? So he studied salamanders and found that it's electricity that stimulates cell regeneration. And in addition, it's electricity that causes stem cells, or what we would call blastocysts, de-differentiated cells, to turn into differentiated cells. So for example, how many of you guys know that every single human cell has the exact same set of genes? 23 chromosomes, exact same set of genes. Every cell, whether it's a nerve cell in the brain, a kidney cell, a liver cell, they all have the same genes. So how do they know to become what they become? They have the exact same information. There's no answer for this in traditional biology, but bioelectromagnetism explains it. We are not our body. We're a field of energy that organizes our body. So even though all of our cells, how many of you heard that in 7 years, all the cells in your body are different than they were 7 years ago? But there's a continuity. You remember things from much further along. So you can't be the material of your body. You must be something greater. And this isn't some spiritual woo-woo concept. This is actually what the scientists have been saying and finding for decades. This research was carried out throughout the 1900s in Russia, Germany, the United States, Japan, and elsewhere. And then I thought, well, this makes sense. And so I started to dive deeper. Well, Dr. Joe Dispenza, how many of you guys have heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza? He's a leader in this community. Amazing guy. I'm so grateful to know him and his work. he's running week-long retreats all over the world where people are healing spontaneously. They call it spontaneous remission from severe illnesses. We're talking stage 4 cancers. I've been to events where people came blind and left seeing. I'm not making this up. Literally, deaf and hearing. People with Parkinson's, no more tremors. People who are in wheelchairs walking because they overcome something in an emotion or an energy field that frees their biology in an instant. And I thought this makes sense based on the understanding of life, that we're not just material beings, but in fact, we are beings of light and energy. And then I thought, well, this can't be new. They must have been doing this. I've heard of this. I read Ram Dass, Be Here Now. How many of you have heard of Ram Dass, Be Here Now, or some spiritual Buddhist or Hindu books? Well, I had remembered someone recommended the autobiography of a yogi to me, and I thought, let me read this. And I read these stories from this young man, Yogananda, in India, searching for God. It's all he wanted. And he met all these saints with all these superpowers until he found his guru, and then he sent him to bring the message of self-realization to the West, to the United States, where he came and was one of the first teachers of yoga and spirituality. And then I remembered another study from that book that when we meditate, our hands actually show an increase in biophoton emission. They can actually measure this with delicate instrumentation. So it made sense to me that we could change our consciousness with our mind, and that if we live in stress and survival, so back to me, I was living in stress and survival. So I could have been eating the perfect diet and getting everything right from the perspective of outer, or what I call external light. But I wasn't taking care of my inner light. And I learned that in addition to taking care of your diet and in addition to protecting yourself from harmful lighting, it's really critical to take care of our inner light. And that's really, to me, the most practical implication of the science of light, and probably the most significant. Now, all that's to say, I had to think about my own company and ask, why am I doing this still? We're making products. Well, I realized we live in a world that strives, in some sense, to throw us out of balance. And wouldn't it be helpful if we could have something that would help us to offset the negative effects of this modern environment, to bring us a little bit more into balance, and we can combine that with this inner light work? In other words, it's not one or the other. It doesn't have to be diet or light, exercise or light exposure. It's really complementary. So my company, Raw, what we strive to do is to create products to help shine light on the light within us, to inspire us to realize our own unlimited potential within. And this is who we really are, beings of light.